Why is this every single time we start recording a new video? It's just 5 minutes of just us breaking down.
Hey, it's Isaac from True Champion Gaming, joined with Caban. Let's talk about Anthem of Vitality first here for Wind.
Yeah, so we have a 2-cost action tamer skill harmony. Really cool to see so many more melody and harmonies throughout the whole set. Target animal or beast ally gets +3 health and gains Spell Shroud until the end of turn. Harmonize, if you've activated a melody card this turn, put 2 buff counters on an animal or beast ally you control, and it is a fast speed. So I rated this card a 4. You can find our rating descriptions in the description of the video below to get kind of an idea of our scale. So what did you rate this?
I did give it a 3. Okay. I was bouncing between 3 and 4. I was trying to go, but when we started rating, I started doing like, oh, this card's good, this card's bad, and then as I got through more and more, I was like, oh, I should go by the actual rating.
Yeah.
And so I did rate this at a 3.
Because, they kind of mix a little bit.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 3, but I think it's really solid for Tamer. A 2-cost harmony with fast that gives 2 buff counters if you harmonize, which I think is the biggest thing about it. That makes it really. The +3 and Spell Shroud, great, but if you can get those 2 buff counters, amazing.
So I feel like the 2 buff counters are a little bit of a bait on this card because, like, realistically, there's not too many melodies that you're gonna want to do at fast speed, and you know you can do this on your own turn with a slow melody, right? But then you're probably not really getting the benefit of its first effect, which, you know, 2 mana for 2 buff counters, that is a strong card for sure. You know, you could definitely use it that way. Yeah. But, you know, I feel like the real strength of this card does lie in that reactive +3 health and Spell Shroud. It means that, you know, like, it has an answer to both attack damage and spell damage, essentially. And I think we're going to see a strategy in Sylvie where they really just go tall. They put out some beast, they buff it off a ton with a bunch of different cards, and they just try to protect that. And they're just trying to swing at you for like 8 every turn and keep that alive. So, you know, this does facilitate that strategy for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think our next card we're going to look at is Korhazi Outlook, which is an ally assassin human. On enter, put a preparation counter on your champion. Big deal. And then also class bonus, remove a preparation counter from your champion. Opponents can't activate cards this turn. Glimpse 1, activate this ability only once per turn. And it's a 1/3. So what did you rate this card?
I rated it a 4.
I also gave this card a 4.
Yeah.
The fact that it gives you a preparation counter and also has a preparation counter effect, really strong.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead.
I do believe that this is slow speed only, I think, for its opponents can't activate cards this turn. So that is something that I just wanted to point out real quick. Hopefully I'm right about that. So it's not like you can just like shut off your entire opponent's turn for 1 prep counter. That'd be crazy busted. But so it does really stop that counterplay, which is huge. Obviously getting way more important in this set. So hey, and also our lovely teammate on the computer just pointed out that you can only activate it during your turn. So all that I just said, yep. We are going to be making a couple rulings videos for FTC. So especially anything that we touch on in the video, like that we're unsure of, like this one, I think it might be fast speed with what they've said, you know, only activating during turn, but we'll touch on that later. It's still, it stops interaction. It gives you the resource that you're using. Yep. Pretty good.
Prep counter, 2-cost 1/3 also, which is like baseline with a prep counter.
Those are pretty good stats, so we have Dematerialize, a 3-cost action. Return target regalia to its owner's material deck. This is a slow speed, which is very, very important. You know, at fast speed, this card would be crazy, but I actually only rated this a 3, which might be low.
I gave it a 3 as well.
Okay.
Because that exact reason. I almost rated it a 4, and I was like, oh, it is slow.
Yeah.
And then I was like, okay, for 3 costs to remove something, it is similar to Spurn to Ashes.
Sure.
Which is, I believe, 3 costs. Destroy 1.
Destroy target regalia 1 cost or less.
Yeah, and it also is slow.
Yeah.
So it is Green's.
It's similar, but definitely giving them back is worse than destroying
for
it.
Sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
But it's not limited to that 1 cost. So I think this card definitely finds a strength in the Majestic Spirit. You know, bouncing that to the deck, you know, can be good. However, if they're running multiple cards of the spell to bring it out and they're already at a high level, like it might not really slow them down that much. So I will say, like, I've tried to build a win deck so far, and I just didn't find the space for this at all.
And this is one of the reasons why I also thought Quicksilver Chalice was a little bit worse, because if Green has this, and Green has multiple cards like this, where they can send Chalice back to deck, and because Chalice bring it out, it banishes that card. That card is now banished forever. if you return Chalice to deck. So also they can try to counter it, but if they don't have counter it, if they can't counter it in any way, then yeah, they just...
No, this is definitely a good counter to Grail. I think
or,
that...
yeah, I said Chalice, sorry, Grail.
Yeah. It's all good. I think that's a really good point, and yeah, maybe this is more of a side deck card because it's a good counter to Crest, maybe. It definitely is a good counter to Grail and stuff, so yeah, depending on games 2 and 3, we could see this being brought in, yeah.
Yeah. Next card here is Displace, which is a 2-cost Cleric Mage spell. Banish target ally, then return it to the field under its owner's control, rested. Class bonus, put an enlightenment counter on your champion, and this is at fast speed.
Yeah.
What did you give this here?
So I gave this a 3.
I gave it 3 as well.
Yeah. It's a very interesting card.
Yes.
There's a lot going on there.
Yeah, so... And I believe if I'm reading this correctly, it leaves and instantly comes back, right?
Yes, so it's not like Zephyr, where Zephyr says banish it, then return it at the end phase. This is more commonly referred to as
flicker.
Blink or Flicker in other games and stuff. So yeah, this will be able to, like Zephyr is really, really good, but there's been plays of like play Dungeon Guide and then like Zephyr it and level up later and stuff like that. With this combo though, you can actually instantly level up twice with Dungeon Guide, which is definitely interesting.
This is also another card for, I think at one point there was a Wind Ride deck that played the 7-drop Arcane Elemental.
Yeah, so this one returns it rested, unfortunately, but it would protect it.
And that's what I'm saying. So just know that this will not work with that.
Yeah.
But Enlightenment counter on your champion, because I feel like people might thought, oh, Enlightenment counter my champion, it's a mage spell, this is great for that, but no, it does return rested. So
there are a ton of really good on-enter effects though on allies.
So many.
Yeah, so I mean, there's a couple different interesting interactions here. You can put it in something like a green slime deck, which I've kind of tried to start messing around with. You could also like displace a Zephyr's Assistant, right? So if you're with Rye, this is basically completely filtering for you because you'll remove the Zephyr's Assistant, instantly get an Enlightenment trigger for that, bring back the Zephyr's Assistant, get an Enlightenment trigger for that, and then also get an Enlightenment trigger for Displace. And if it's your first one that turn, you get another one. So, it's not really like doing too much in that kind of deck, but filter is filter, and you don't always want to use the enlightenment counters for card draw either. This card can read pay 2, get 3 enlightenment counters, which is really good for if you want to use power overwhelming and just like go up really high or something.
This is one of those cards that will eventually, I feel like there's enough cards that printed, there'll be some kind of crazy combo eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. It has a lot going on with the text, and it could definitely get strong. And it's fast. I think a lot of things that scream out to me when I read this card is your own interactions, your own boards. But you can do it on your opponent. So if they're going to drop an Ace and Protector on you or something, make them bounce something, and then to hand to bring it out, and then flicker it and make them bounce itself or another card or something really slow down.
That's a good point too.
So I'll let you read this one.
Yeah, next card, Caban, as you just brought up, which is 3-cost Green Slime. It's a 0/1, Pride 3. On enter, put 2 buff counters on Green Slime, so it becomes a 2/3. And then on leave, put those buff counters that were on Green Slime on a target ally you control.
With class bonus.
Yeah,
so
that's class bonus tamer.
Yeah.
And that's important to note that it's not just those 2 buff counters. It can be any amount of buff counters that are currently on Green Slime can go to another ally and not just like a beast or anything like that.
Yeah. They really left that open for sure, and I like that a lot.
I gave this a 4.
I also gave it a 4. So, even if you're not going to do anything cute with the buff counters and stuff, like 3 cost 2/3 isn't the worst. Obviously, it's locked behind that Pride 3, but, like the card that we just talked about, right? If you're banishing it and having it re-enter instantly, like, imagine having 2 of these on board, right? Like, then you can just get into such, like, tricky stuff where you have 2 of these on board, you're blinking one out, putting those buff counters on the other one, blinking that one out. Now you're putting 4 buff counters on the other one, blinking that one out, but putting 6 buff counters.
Then you play one squirrel, and you put them all on one squirrel, and then you just
got a
OTK
10-10
squirrel.
Yeah.
And then that's how you beat someone, and then like you really make them bummed about playing this game.
Yeah. That's one of those losses that you go up to your friends after a big tournament, and you're like, I just lost to a 9/9 squirrel.
Yeah.
I might have to rethink this game.
Yeah, for sure.
So next we have Innovative Agility, and this is one of the 3 that we've seen. Fire, Wind, and Water all got their own, and this is a 2-cost action mage spell reaction. As an additional cost to activate this card, de-level your champion and recover 5. Units you control gain your choice of Stealth or Spell Shroud until end of turn, and it is a fast action. So I did rate this one a 5.
So I rated this a 4.
Really?
Because I really like that this one. So this is the cheapest of the 3. I believe Fires was 3 cost and Waters was 4 cost.
4 cost, yeah.
So the fact that this is a 2 cost and this one is fast.
Yeah.
And the other ones weren't. And so this one I feel like it's actually significantly better. At first I thought it was bad because I was thinking slow, just like, or not bad, but definitely worse. It didn't make much sense to me. But the fact that you can choose to either stealth or spell shroud your allies, and it's all units too, so it's your champion
it's
as well.
all units.
So it's
that's
crazy. It's a double safety for
Yeah.
your champion. But like I'm thinking when you have a big board, you can choose if it doesn't matter if if you're playing against like a spell or like a mage or whatever, or like a Lorraine. No matter what, you can protect your units.
Right, unless they hit you with like an AoE spell or like a sweep or something. But there are other answers for that too. But yeah, I mean, 2 cost fast that essentially just protects you for a whole turn from basically almost whatever. Like that is some really insane like interaction for a very cheap cost as well. I gave it a 5. I think like, having 4 of these in your deck is just insane. Like this would be crazy as like a regalia that had some sort of like really high cost because it's a really powerful effect, but like the fact that you're not limited to just one of these, like this is a 4 of effect, the water one I felt was crazy strong because of how much card draw you can get, but this one is also like you can really put the pressure on your opponent while just basically safeguarding yourself because it's not 4 costs, it's not 5 costs. Like Shroud and Mist, right? Like cards like that kind of read protect yourself for a turn. Even Champions Festival, that's not the right word.
Peaceful Reunion.
Peaceful Reunion, yeah. Like all those kind of cards that are like basically give yourself a free turn, they're always like 4 or 5 cost or higher. This is like you can play down a couple allies, swing into your opponent, just protect yourself, and still be doing both those at once. So I think it's a really, really strong card.
Yeah, same here. Next we have Intrepid Spearman, which is a 4 cost 2/2 ally warrior human and level 1+. The first time attack damage would be dealt to Intrepid Spearman each turn. Reveal a card at random from your memory. If that card is wind element, prevent 3 of that damage. And go ahead and give your review. I'm trying to find mine.
So I gave this a 3, but that was before I found out additional information about it.
Yes.
I don't know if I would change my answer, but so 3 is what I gave it.
So I gave this a teetering 2 and 3, but I gave it a 2 because I'm okay if I'm wrong. Yeah. But I like to be a little more extreme in my things. Which, if you notice in like the fire one, the fire review we gave, I was like, man, I gave a lot of 2s. Yeah. But it's fine. Yeah. So I'm gonna give this a 2 and say, hopefully I'm wrong, but I don't know if that's enough for 4 cost. That's what I'm thinking.
4 cost is pretty high for this because it is attack damage, so there's going to be some matchups where this is just completely useless. They're just going to Sparklight, and get rid of it. There's 2 things that I want to mention with this. One is that we are definitely seeing a really high theme of like wind decks want to run really high counts of wind cards, right? We see that with Valiant Breeze, Fairy Whispers, this card. So the fact, and we kind of touched on that a little bit in our normal video because now there's a very big wind hate card that banishes based on wind element cards in your memory. So running this kind of strategy where you're really trying to get as many wind kind of possible in your deck, there is a very, very big counterplay to that now. And the second thing that I want to mention is that, because it's a little confusing when you first read this, but we did confirm that this is going to trigger every single time if it hasn't been dealt damage. So if someone tries to deal 2 attack damage to this card and you successfully show a wind and it's prevented, if they then try to deal another 2 from a separate source, you will trigger this again and you will prevent that. You will keep on doing that until it is actually dealt damage. So obviously this doesn't apply to spell damage because it says attack damage for its effect. But the only way to kill this card is for them to either not show wind for the effect, to hit it for 4 because 3 of the damage will be prevented. It'll go down to 1 health, but then it will not trigger again because it's not the first time that attack damage would be dealt. Or you hit it for 5 or higher, because it doesn't matter if they're preventing that damage. But so that's a very important interaction that I don't think a lot of people will notice the first time that they're really looking at that card.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have Mark of Fervor. This is an interesting one. I just kind of actually, well, let me read off the card first. 2 costs, Fantasia, Tamer Spell, Ally Link, and the linked ally gets +1 health, +1 attack, and has Vigor. So you're going to put this onto a creature, essentially. It's linked with that. So if that creature gets like Zephyred or whatever, this card also goes to the graveyard. We've seen a couple ally links so far that have floating memory. This does not have that. And that's what led me to rating this, I think, a 2?
I gave it a 2.
I gave it a 3. And honestly, I kind of want to change that after I've started to build some decks now, because I built, a tamer deck actually, and I pulled this card out while like trying to fit all the cards in, and this was one of the first cards I cut actually.
Yep. The reason why I looked at it, I was like, oh, that seems kind of cool, and I was like, training session.
Yeah.
which just gives a buff counter, which is pretty much all this is doing, and it does gain vigor, which is important. But the fact that it doesn't have floating memory is such a big deal.
Yeah. I mean, vigor is a very strong keyword, but I just it feels a little weak.
Yes. Yeah. I wish there was a little bit extra on this card, but
yeah.
So for me, I gave it a 2. I think it could see play still in a certain very niche decks.
Yeah.
But
well, like we were saying earlier, like Wind Tamer might really just get to the point where they're buffing one creature like crazy, right?
Yeah.
And if they're doing it to something that doesn't have vigor naturally, that is a very strong effect, because then it's going to turn off. Like if you give it taunt somehow, or if it has intercept or something like that, it does really buff it a lot. But
sure.
It just kind of does feel weak. I kind of want to give it a 2.
Next up, we have Parsonet Royal Maid, which is a 2-cost 1/3 assassin human ally, level 2 plus. It has stealth, and then you can rest this to Glimpse 1, which is reveal the top card of your deck. When you reveal a wind element card this way, another ally you control gains stealth until the end of turn. This one I gave a 3. Yep, I gave it a 3.
So I also gave it a 3. Just one real quick thing I want to mention: this is a unique ally, so you can only have one on board, and you glimpse and then reveal. So it's similar to Fairy Whispers, where you get a glimpse first, potentially reorient your deck, and then reveal the top card of your deck. But yeah, I mean, glimpse 1. That's a little hard to pull off, right? Like Fairy Whispers is look at 3 and then reveal to get its effect. Glimpsing 1. I feel like, especially if you're running like a third or an advanced element deck, and you have Norm and advanced element and Wind, you're not going to hit that trigger very often,
right. And I will say it is decent stats. So if there's some, this is another human ally to throw in some kind of human ally Lorraine deck, where it could be beneficial. And even though this is an assassin human, there is no class bonus. Like that stealth will just be level 2 or higher.
Yeah.
Which could come into play. And also getting something stealth, like let's say if you're running Banner Knight or Phalanx Captain or whatever, is a pretty cool effect, I'll say.
For sure.
If you can get it.
Yeah, it's a little too situational for the strength that it gives.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I would summarize it.
Sure. Next up, go ahead and take this one.
Sure. So we have a 3-cost Rally the Peasants. It's an action warrior skill, class bonus with warrior. This card costs 3 less to activate, and if an opponent controls 3 or more allies. Look at the top 6 cards of your deck. You may reveal a human card from among them and put it in your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your deck in any order, and it is slow. So I gave this a 2, actually.
I gave it a 3.
Okay.
And mostly because I'm almost guaranteed there's a deck that's so good with this card.
Sure.
I was trying to figure out what it was, but I couldn't off the top of my head. Like, revealing a human and putting it in your hand is a big deal for the exact same thing I was just talking about, Phalanx Captain and Banner Knight. So, but the fact that they have to have 3 or more allies to get it for 0.
To get it for free, because paying 3 is huge.
For a search.
For a search, yeah. So I think this is specifically broken if, Wind Lorraine Human Beats becomes a meta deck, because then each player is going to be siding 4 of these, because whoever can find these first and rush out their Phalanx Captains first and stuff are probably going to win. So it's kind of a weird card to me, to be honest. This is one of my least favorite cards that I've seen, just because, it just seems like it's a card designed for a mirror match that both players are going to use. It's just kind of odd.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
It's good against Tamer, too. I will say that if they're doing wideboard Tamer stuff.
Yeah, that's true, too.
And the only thing I can think of is that where Phalanx Captain, where it costs less, if you have a full board, and you're like, I know this will give me, if you have 5 ally humans on board, and you're like, I have this card in hand, but not Phalanx Captain, which will buff them all, give them 1 more attack. That's pretty okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then again, that being said, something like Inspiring Call would almost do the same thing in that case.
Yeah,
where it's giving everything 1 attack. So, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed out that it's just allies, because I don't know why in my head I was like, this is only good in a mirror match. So it definitely can help, because if you're in that Tamer versus human, both you guys are fighting for the board and stuff, I could definitely see that being helpful. But it is just an odd card to me for some reason. I don't know. When I read it, something just feels off, and I'm just like, I don't really get this card. So maybe I'm just rating it too low or something.
Yeah. Next up, we have Scatter Essence, which is a 2-cost cleric spell. Destroy target Fantasia, and it has floating memory, but it is slow. I gave this a 4.
So I gave this a 5, and it's more because of our rating system, like being how much this will impact the meta, and less about like the card strength itself. I do think it's still like a 4 or 5 just on card strength by itself, but you know, especially in that blue matchup of Wind versus Blue, you're gonna see, you know, like they have a lot of like Blue has the strongest fractals, which are all Fantasias. So you know, if they're doing their, you know, each opponent mills 1, and then it's a fractal after that and all that stuff. You know, if they both mill you a floating memory and then you just do this in response, now you've just gone way up on that trade, right? Yeah. Like, and even worst case scenario, if they're doing the norm 1 or something like that, right? They get their glimpse too. That's their effect. But then you basically 1 for 1. You guys both essentially lose a card from your hand, but then you're gonna get that floating memory. Yep. And I think like floating memory from this is kind of stronger than most of the fractal and Fantasia effects. The thing is, if you're playing against Tamer, where you're trying to destroy their taunt Fantasias and stuff like that have the floating memory, it is more of an even trade. So, you know, it's definitely like, I don't think it's like crazy strong, right? But like it is going to change how those matchups are played.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have Wind Rider Invoker up next. 3-cost ally Mage Human. On enter, you may remove 2 enlightenment counters from your champion. If you do, draw a card, and Wind Rider Invoker gets +3 attack until end of turn, and it's a 1/2. So I rated this a 3.
I did give it a 4.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was hopeful that, because this is basically your enlightenment counters, it's a 1 less to make a draw. So in my head, if you're playing this, you're obviously playing Mage, where you get a decent amount of enlightenment counters, and so this is, in my head, was a 3-cost draw a card, 4/2, rush into face.
Yeah.
So
or kill spell on stick.
Or kill spell on stick. So that also draws you a card.
Yeah.
It does -2 enlightenment counters, which is a big deal, but it is at a discount from your normal draw that enlightenment counters do give you. So I am more of a hopeful for that this would be in some kind of Wind Ride deck where you're or Merlin, I guess now, where this is just like a kill spell on a stick or something to replace itself too.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not like it's not inherently drawing by playing it. Like you're using a card to get a cheaper card draw, but then also getting a bonus out of it. So like it's a well balanced card, I think. The interesting thing to me is that it's not class bonus. Yeah. So I've looked at cards like Careful Study before, because that's also not class bonus, and it'll give you 5 enlightenment counters. Yep. And any champion can use enlightenment counters. You don't have to be Mage. Yep. So if you put 5 enlightenment counters on your card, if you're like, you know, going, I don't know, high level count for Sylvie or something, because Sylvie can get pretty high. Yeah, or Alan. Yeah. So like, you know, you do like a free Careful Studies, then you get to draw and replace itself, right? But then you're stuck with 2 leftover counters that aren't doing anything until you do another Careful Studies or something like this. Yep. So I think it almost like brings a little bit more, you know, like kind of weird synergy outside of Mage as well.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure.
So I don't think that's a very consistent combo, but I could see that kind of being like branched on later.
Yeah, mine's a hopeful, and I hope I get to use it and play it in good scenarios. So next we're going to go on to our Regalia items. So the first up for Regalia for Wind is Effigy of Gaia. It is a Regalia item for Tamer Bauble. It is a Tamer Bauble, and a class bonus, your champion gets 1 level as long as you control an animal or beast ally. Whenever an opponent activates an attack card with Cleave, animal and beast allies you control get +2 until the end of turn.
Crazy.
What did you give this?
I gave it a 4, and I kind of want to give it a 5 though.
Mine was a teeter 4 and 5, because this is just an instant, like it's whenever your opponent activates a Cleave. So when you're going against any kind of warrior that's trying to clear your board, every time they try to Cleave, this is going off. Even multiple times per turn. I don't know why they do it multiple times per turn.
Sure.
But multiple times per turn, this does protect against that. Or, you know, some units have Cleave as well. That's usually more in Tamer. So I really like this card. It's like a safety for Tamer that also is giving you that level for Pride effects.
Right.
Automatically, because you're only really going to need that level if you do have an animal or beast on board. Yeah. So I think it's a solid card, and it's the fact that it costs 0 actually was even bigger for me. Yeah,
I mean, a very comparable card is Beastbond Ears, right? 0 cost, your animal gets +1 level as long as you control an animal or beast ally. Basically the same text, except Beastbond Ears doesn't have class bonus, but like usually you're only going to be really using that level if you are level 1 anyways, because a lot of things are like Pride 2 and stuff. I don't see a lot of situations where you'd be a spirit without class bonus needing 1 level on your card, right? So, But, you know, like, I mean, it's essentially Beast Spawn Ears, which is already like a Sylvie staple, essentially.
Yeah,
Even though Sylvie's not good right now, like, that's still one of the first cards that you throw in your material deck. So the fact that it's just an upgraded version of that's just Wind Element. You're not having to wait till your Terra or something like that. And, you know, Wind now basically has 2 Beast Spawn Ears, right? Like, that's kind of crazy,
you throw them both in.
Yeah, right. No, I mean, you definitely really could. And then that way you get to level 1. You know, you can even bring this out with Beseech or something, because Wind also has that. And, like, really fast in the game, you can be level 3 and not be, you know, using a ton of floating memory to, like, actually be leveling up and stuff, you know? So, very interesting card. And, I mean, yeah, the built-in cleave reduction is crazy.
With those 3, you know, level 1 and Beast Spawn and that, you can bring out your green slime just for, you know.
There you go.
It's
Green
3,
Slime's
so.
online. So we have one of the spirits. So this is the Wind, Spirit of Serene Wind. We've seen this for Wind, Water, and Fire. It's champion, on enter, glimpse 6, draw 6 cards, lineage release, recover 6, and you do that by banishing this champion from your lineage. So, you know, 15 health, same as all the other ones. All of them read exactly the same. I did give this a 4, and my notes are just same as Water. I think sorry, go ahead. What's your rating?
Mine, and I said this in our Fire video, where mine is a 5 just because of how it affects the meta.
Fair.
I do think this one is weaker than Fire's, and I give my reasoning for Fire in that too. But yeah, in that it was very much so the same as Wind, which I think you're about to cover why.
Yeah, so I think Wind and Water are more of our control elements, right? So I think like that recovery is a little bit more important in those types of decks. And also like Glimpse 6, we've already seen a lot of Wind cards that like really rely on, you know, synergizing with other Wind cards and everything. So I think like Glimpse could be pretty important in Wind too, which, you know, like I think like Glimpse in Fire is a little bit less important than Water and Wind. But that's kind of to be determined. But
the downside, I will say, is that, like you were mentioning earlier, Wind really likes to play Wind cards.
Yeah.
They really like to have as many Wind cards in their hand.
That recovery, right?
Yeah, and having, you know, reveal from your memory. So the fact that this is where if you really need it, as soon as you play it, it feels like it's like really hurting you if you do lineage release. So
no, that's a fair point. And like Wind also really likes having a lot of cards, right? So drawing 6 instead of 7 does hurt your Valiant Breezes. You know, like I mean, it's a thing for Wind where you go like tactful turn 1, tactful turn 2, and then you're sitting on this huge hand and like, you know, so kind of it is an interesting card. I think we can kind of skip through it because we've talked about 2 different ones already. If you guys want, you know, go check out our Water video especially, because I think Wind and Water are going to be kind of like similar topics, and the Water video is a really good one to watch.
Why don't you cover this one, because I want to take the next one.
Okay, sounds good. So we have Ventus, Staff of Zephyrs. It's a 0-cost Regalia item Mage Staff. Whenever you activate a Wind Element Mage spell, put a Refinement counter on Ventus. You can tap it to remove a Refinement counter from Ventus, put an Enlightenment counter on your champion, and you can tap it to remove 3 counters from Ventus to suppress target ally. And this is all at fast speed. So I gave this a 4.
I give it a 4 as well.
Okay, so it's crazy good value, honestly. It is not once per turn, put a refinement counter on. So the cool thing here is that, like, obviously, you know, over the course of 3 turns, removing the counters from this is just getting you a free draw, right? Which is really good for a 0-cost Regalia item. But you're probably going to stack up more counters than removing 1 per turn by tapping it. So you'll also kind of get that free suppression without like sacrificing your draw, if that makes sense, right? And like I really like that about this card. I like that it's not just once per turn you get a refinement counter, and you know, we've seen the strength of enlightenment counters just by not only card draw but like using other ways to level up and everything like that. So this is kind of that card that says like, okay, Wind Rye might just take the backseat. It might just play a super passive game trying to live as long as possible, and this card is going to help facilitate that value it gets.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. And I will say this also, none of this is class bonus. Which is kind of huge. And the thing that you're just talking about, where you do have to play mage spells, but a lot of those mage spells and things that you're doing that gives you lightning counters or is doing the same thing for this.
So this video we're recording, you know, pretty late. We've had the spoilers for I think a week now or something. Not necessarily late, but we just, I mean, if you watch our other videos, you know how long those are. It's been taking some time. So, but we're actually at the point now where like I've been messing around with a lot more deck building now because I've actually had some more time to do that. And I will say I threw this into a Wind Sylvie deck because I realized that a lot of my cards were actually mage spells, and I was like, honestly, this kind of I want to test it out, see how it works. So like I think we're gonna really start to see those enlightenment counters start to creep into the other classes now.
And,
but
so in the mesh of the two of multiple classes.
Yeah.
So Windwalker Boots is a 0-cost assassin accessory class bonus at the beginning of your end phase. If your champion is awake, put a preparation counter on them, and then you can banish this, draw a card, activate this ability only if your champion has 5 or more preparation counters on it. What did you give this?
So I gave it a 4.
Okay.
I feel like it could maybe go a little higher.
Mine is a 4 as well. And this is when I think a while ago, and actually maybe because I think we redid normal, so I think I mentioned it there. But this is one card where I'm so hopeful for that it actually works specifically for Tristan.
Yeah.
Which is the almost I think it's the exact same. I think it hurts me if you don't attack, but it's basically the exact same thing.
I think it is if your champion's awake.
Okay,
put
yeah.
a prep counter on. Yeah.
So the fact that you can get, if you're playing Wind Tristan, you can do 2 preparation counters.
It's pretty crazy.
Every single turn. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, and it's a 0 cost, so it's like you go turn 1, Xander, turn 2 Tristan, turn 3 Windwalker Boots. Like it's not like you're required more floating memory at that point.
Even turn 2 Windwalker Boots.
Yeah, no,
you
for
start getting it on your
absolutely.
earlier.
Yeah,
So.
I like that it's a 0 cost. It feels like you can get it online because the earlier you bring this out, the better, obviously, right? Because you're going to really stack on those prep counters, and eventually you can banish this to draw a card. And that's really strong on a 0 cost Regalia.
And I do think it's interesting because it's going to make you want to play a different type of... Like, you're not going to want to attack with your champion at all. So you're not really going to want to run attack cards. You might have some high-end ones for when you do banish this, or you feel like I have plenty of preparation counters.
You need a sweep or something.
Yeah, so, once you finally want to bring out your coup de grace... and get rid of 4 preparation counters.
Yeah, to try to do a Rending Flames, basically. I don't know.
I don't think that's the case.
Yeah. Prep counters are strong, though, for sure.
Yeah.
And we've seen so many more uses for that in this set. So it's
for sure.
It's an incredibly interesting card.
Yeah, I'm excited for that one. So go ahead and take the last one here for us.
So our final card for Wind is Zephyr's Edge. It's a 0-cost Wind element Regalia weapon warrior sword. Class bonus on enter. If it's not your materialized phase, Zephyr's Edge gets +1 attack until end of turn. And it's a 1/2. So I gave this a 2.
I gave it a 3.
Okay.
And I mean, there's synergy with Quicksilver Grail, which I think is like one of the most obvious things. You got Beseech the Wind, you got Onsel.
Yeah.
So I think those are all the main things that you would use to be able to bring this out.
Right.
To get its effect.
Yeah. It's a little similar to Sword of Seeking, right?
Yep.
Where it's a 1/2. I mean, Sword of Seeking sees the most play right now because of its 1/2 stats, not necessarily because of the True Sight. So you don't get True Sight with this, but you get a bonus if you're bringing out with something like Beseech, because having an on-demand 0-cost 2-attack sword is pretty hard to do.
Yeah.
Really the only one that I can think of right now is sort of Adversity, which you have to have no allies for.
Sure.
But Wind getting this access is also really nice because it's going to make those hurricane sweeps hit a lot harder. Because right now, normally Fire Sweep or Flame Sweep in a Fire Lorraine deck is doing 5, and Wind or Hurricane Sweep is doing 4, just because of how the game plays out. This can help Wind become a 5 sweep as well, which is really important. And it is important to note too that the class bonus on enter, when you do something like Lorraine level 3 Spirit Ruler or Lorraine level 1, those effects are happening in the materialization step, so those aren't going to be buffing the sword. But I do think it's versatile enough that I should probably be giving it a 3, because making your opponent know that you have access to a 2-attack sword at all times for free, that's really good. It gives Beseech more of a offensive capability as well.
And it is important to note, level 3 Lorraine, if you went from Dungeon Guide, does work. And I guess level 1, 2, but
you're not going to do that.
You're not going to want to do that. I'm just saying technically.
Yeah, because Dungeon Guide is leveling up in the main phase.
Yes.
So your Spirit Ruler will come back. You're going to get that 2 attack for that turn, and then next turn it's basically going to be 1/1 because you probably swung with it since you buffed its attack, and then it's losing that attack next turn. So it's strong but weak, versatile, but also so it's kind of just like an odd card. I should probably rate it a 3.
It'll definitely see play because it's like Sword of Seeking, like we said, but and can have some upsides to it
for
in
sure.
some cases. So. But that's it for us. That's all the cards we got for Wind. Stay tuned because we got one more video coming out in probably about 2 days. Unless it's on a Friday, that might be a Monday, so maybe 3 days. But in any case, thank you so much for watching. Let us know if we missed anything down below in the comments. Helps us a ton. Make sure we're not obviously just blanking on everything. And
Right.
when we do our rulings videos, it also helps with those, of course, as well.
Yeah. If there's any cards that you're not understanding from the set, please comment those below because we definitely like to address them from our subscribers, our viewers, and stuff.
Yeah.
We'd love to help you guys out as much as possible.
For sure. But in any case, have a great day. Peace.